And hello everybody, welcome back. This time, Chapter 8, Monitoring and Controlling Projects, really in a predictive slash waterfall slash traditional project. Bam! This chapter is what it's all about because these projects are risk-based. And risk-based projects mean you want to monitor, control, and as you manage the project. This is the focus. These are your objectives for the day. Pause and review them. So monitoring and controlling, this is about regularly looking at the process and assessing it. The bottom line is going to be this. We have a plan, okay? And we built that plan when we did project planning. We are comparing the data in the plan to execution while we build the project, right? We're also, now here we're collecting data, okay? And we're making a comparison between the plan data and that data. And if there's a gap, or as we call in project management, a variance, then we want to do the controlling piece. Otherwise, we're doing the monitoring. The monitoring is going to happen here in the control process, and then the controlling happens if there's a gap. That's it in a nutshell, really. So here's a summary of monitoring. You can see we do it throughout the project. That's really the point. No matter what knowledge area we are talking about, integration, which is what you do as a project manager, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resource, doesn't matter, and on and on. Everyone has a monitoring and controlling process. Sometimes we say monitor, like with stakeholders. Stakeholders can't really be controlled. They can be engaged and influenced. So we don't say control, but make no mistake, that's a control process. With risks, a risk by itself, its definition is it's an uncertainty, either a threat or an opportunity. Well, because it's an uncertainty, we call it monitoring, but really it's about controlling risks all along. Project integration management, I said, is what you do. This is your subject matter expertise that allows you to monitor and control and implement changes in a controlled approach. These are crucial processes in integration management. That's absolutely true. And so part of what we're doing as we monitor is we can do status reports, trend reports, other historical reports. What project managers like to do are forecasting reports as well. Earned value management, which we talked about at length in cost management, it is a great way to forecast, okay? We also want to look at the baselines. There are only 3 baselines in project management. Well, the new version has added milestones as well, but it still focuses on these 3 for earned value analysis. But you could look at the scope data, the time data, and the cost data along the way. Those 3 make up earned value management. So when we do earned value, if we're forecasting that way, there are 3 variables and only 3 variables. 1 is called plan value, 2 are actual costs, and 3 is earned value. Earned value is the work done. That's the definition. Actual cost means the money spent or incurred. I've already written a check. And plan value is the authorized budget. It really is assigned to the schedule. So plan value is the schedule. Actual cost is the cost piece. And earned value is scope. That's how we think of that. So along the way, to do that forecasting, we're provided some formulas. You could pause and review these formulas. Notice the 3 pillars that we've already discussed. So one plan value, earned value, and actual cost. Actual cost is actually the 3rd pillar, okay? So I will erase this one right here. There we go. So those are your 3 pillars. We can do that to do a cost variance, which is CV equals earned value minus actual cost. SV equals, so the schedule variance, how off or on is the schedule, is EV minus plan value. So earned value, what have I done? What have I built if I'm building a house? And the plan value, is that what I expected to build? If the earned value is the same as the plan value, you get a variance of 0. That's perfect, right? An index, cost performance index, these are really measures of efficiency. These are measures of performance, okay? Just to make a distinction as a project manager. And then, of course, I can forecast my estimate at completion or my estimate to completion by various formulas. You can find examples online and in the book. So here's what we do as project managers. We're always working with something called the S-curve, which is really how projects really work. All right, so you can see it forms kind of an S, right? We start out slow, we climb while we execute, and then we tail off at the end. Hence an X curve. And that's what this one is right here, leading to budget at completion. If we get off, see, notice earned value at this point in time. Your boss said, hey, today, give me an update on earned value. Well, maybe you've only built part of the house, so you've earned less than you had planned to build right here. That's the S-curve. And your costs have been a lot higher. You can see they're above the S-curve. That's going to create some challenges, and you would have to explain them. So you could plug in, if you're given then earned value, plan value, and AC, these again are those pillars of EVM. You can plug them into those formulas that we had in the previous slide, and you would be able to come to these same conclusions. Of course, you'd want to be able to justify them or explain them to your boss. Now, interpreting earned value numbers, here are some generalities. If you have a negative number for either cost or schedule, it's a problem. You're over budget or you're behind schedule. If likewise for the indexes CPI and SPI, an index, if it's right on track, should equal 1.0. But if an index is less than 1, it's a problem. And if it's more than 1, well, you're ahead of schedule or under budget. Generally good, but if you're really ahead of schedule or under budget, that can be a problem too. So here's a study for EVM in practice. The book covers this, so I'll just leave it at that. The percentage of organizations using earned value, this slide is pretty accurate by my experience, but here's what I know. If you're doing business with the U.S. government and it's a large contract, EVM, earned value management, is required, right? So it is a powerful tool that the government says we need a way to measure and track performance of baselines of scope, schedule, and cost. Now, along that S-curve, you have a budget at completion. If you remember, on that S-curve, the project starts, goes up, and finishes up. It ends at the budget at completion, okay? Before your project begins, your estimate at completion equals your budget at completion. Before the project begins, right? You haven't done anything. They are the same. It's only later when you are spending more than you should that your estimate at completion will tool away from your budget at completion. So again, we looked at those formulas on charts previous. You can look at this and plug the numbers in and come up with your own solutions, right? And so this would be a sample earned value chart. Again, this is where you expected budget at completion to be when all the work was done and the money was spent. But you can see based on the current CPI, your CPI has not been on this track as you planned. It's been different. And so now you have an estimate at completion that's tooling away. As project manager, you'd want to come up with strategies to try and get it back. So one of the things estimate to completion does is from this point on, how do we get back to budget at completion? Performance reports, I mentioned those were, so that's a forecast report. I mentioned we could do status reports, progress reports, the forecast reports we just looked at. We could do trend reports is another one. There are various, we could do a risk report, right? Many of them, you have to do what you need to do. This would be a sample performance report. Pause and review that. It's covered in the book as well quite nicely. So what's key to this, right? And I said project management was about change control. So we have integrated change control. As an integration management expert, that's your knowledge area as a project manager. Integrated change control becomes your key process to controlling change along the way. The book does cover a what went right. I think this is a very good example. Please pause, review it here, but clarified in detail in the book, right? Also, keep in mind in integration management scope, most projects fail because scope is either not identified in advance of the project or during planning, or was identified but was not completed. You want to avoid things called scope creep, scope gap, and scope change. If you want, write those down and Google them. You'll find good definitions and you'll appreciate what they're trying to give you. But scope management is why most projects fail. Well, you don't have to look up scope creep. Here it is. It is, in short, here's the definition. It is adding functionality that was not called for. Not called for. I'm trying to abbreviate not. That's a not called for. Terrible writing on my part. My apologies. Scope creep is when you add functionality to your project that is not part of your project. And it will eat up your schedule, it'll eat up your budget, and your scope true scope won't be able to be met. One of the processes I love about project management is called validating scope. The key to validating scope is it's a control process, so I love it for that reason, but it's a control process for the customer. This is where you, the project manager, take the product that you've already assessed, give it to them, bring your quality results, and let the customer validate and sign off. I want that sign off, or they should recommend changes actually along the way if they're not happy. This would be a sample deliverable acceptance form that you might bring with it, okay? So controlling scope is very important, but you have to have clearly defined scope. Like I said, scope that wasn't identified is going to be a problem, and when your customer looks at it, they will then want it done, and that will cause changes, add cost, and add to your schedule, add risk, add quality standards, etc., etc. Your stakeholders will not be happy. So we want happy stakeholders. So it's just not writing for me. So I'm going to stop noting on that slide. This is a best practice worth noting. Pause and review that at your leisure. Now, schedule management, even though most projects fail because of scope not adhered to or not discovered that's legitimate, you'll spend most of your effort working the schedule, right? And so this is performed, you have to monitor and control the schedule as well. You'll spend a lot of time doing it. A lot of things cause conflicts, priorities, resource availability, other constraints, right? Expect them and anticipate them and have a plan to deal with them. Here's a media snapshot. The book covers that quite well, including this work performance information example. Here's a Gantt chart that you can use for scheduling. I use this on occasion. You'll use a milestone chart for scheduling when you're briefing key stakeholders, etc. So there are various tools you can use to deliver the schedule. The key is no surprises. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Changes, delays, other issues with explanations why. We'll pause here and come back to cost management next.